Can I
which is
just
slightly
can I just give him one quick put down?
If you want to, you go ahead.
You're making a point that is ludicrous as saying that Peter Pan was real. Well, Santa.
Yeah, it's terribly clever, but this is a very serious subject, and you treat it with immense levity.
In face-to-face interactions, there's a set of politeness rules that most of us follow to avoid attacking each other's face. Yes, but is a common polite way of disagreeing with somebody we know. First, there's the acknowledgement token yes before the opposing but sets in. But what happens in a debate where these rules are overridden, and what does it look like? I'll be using principles from conversation analysis and concepts from rhetorical analysis. This channel is all about language analysis. I analyze the language of criminals and media personalities. If you like this video, please hit the like button and also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell.
Why do you have such faith in drug courts?
Well, that's kind of an easy question to answer. I see that they work, and instead of throwing them into prison, it puts them into a 18-month to 2-year program.
What's not to like about it?
Well, the evidence in favour of them is pretty scanty. If you want to stop people becoming drug users, then the best thing to do is to make sure they never start in the first place. And an effective deterrent criminal justice system would actually do that.
A little more helpful.
Matthew, come on.
I'm not understanding your point. Your point is to stop drugs and alcoholism by just people never starting?
In conversation analysis, Perry's questions called a first pair part. A first pair part warrants and even demands a second pair part response. Adjacency pairs also include speech actions like assessments and praise.
You two believe in this fantasy of addiction in which people lose...
Fantasy of addiction.
A complete fantasy in which people lose all power over themselves and become victims of this terrible, frightening disease.
But right now you're quoting...
Let me finish. This is what you believe, this terrible, frightening disease after which they cannot stop taking drugs. If you really believe that, then you would presumably think the best thing would be that they never ever came in contact with those drugs.
Of course.
Wouldn't it therefore be wise to deter them from doing so by a stern and effective criminal justice system which actually persuaded them it was unwise to take the drugs in the first place?
When do I get to speak? I'm dying to speak.
Hitchens make an insert expansion. Insert expansions occur in between the expected first pair part question and second pair part answer. In insert expansions, we often find statements that disrupt the conversation. In this case, the expansion consists of Hitchens' 15-second downgrading of Perry's opinion.
You two believe in this fantasy of addiction in which people lose...
Fantasy of addiction.
A complete fantasy in which people lose all power over themselves and become victims of this terrible, frightening disease.
After the words fantasy of addiction, implying that Perry believes in something fictional, things start getting more direct.
You really believe in it?
Speak. When can I speak? Speak. Okay, so...
I didn't come here to be quiet.
Neither did I.
No,
I didn't come here to listen to ludicrous things like that either. So...
Well, you tell me why it's ludicrous if you're so clever.
I will.
In the following, Perry starts diminishing Hitchens. Let's keep an eye on this diminishment process throughout the debate.
I'm a drug addict. I'm a person that if I have a drink, I can't stop. And so it would be following your ideology that I'm choosing to do that. That I'm choosing...
That's exactly not my ideology, it is my belief. Yes, you do choose.
It is, and it's a belief that you wrote in your book, correct?
You have a choice over whether you drink or not, you have a choice over...
But your book is the only book in modern times that has this ideology. Yeah. So doesn't that teach you something?
On a syntactic level, Perry's asking Hitchens questions. On a semantic level, however, Perry's only asking these questions to end up with this critique that's masked as a question.
So doesn't that teach you something?
In linguistics, we distinguish between locutionary and illocutionary speech acts. On a locutionary level, Perry's question is just that, a question. On an illocutionary level, however, it's an attack on Hitchens' belief. The perlocutionary aspect is the effect of the illocution on the other speaker, how the other speaker reacts to the illocutionary force. As we'll see in a moment, Hitchens' reaction is to keep opposing Perry's viewpoint. But Perry also doesn't acknowledge Hitchens' correction.
That I'm choosing.
That's exactly not my ideology, it is my belief. Yes, you do choose.
It is.
Since he maintains the noun ideology.
But your book is the only book in modern times that has this ideology.
Despite Hitchens' disassociation from the implications of this word.
Well, it's quite often unfashionable ideas are unfashionable because they are unpopular with influential people. Doesn't necessarily bother me. You tell me what the objective diagnosis is to establish the existence of addiction in the human body.
Hitchens quickly dismisses Perry's elocution with his grounds that unfashionable ideas are often unpopular. He then immediately asks a new question and maintains dominance. Now Hitchens the one doing the asking.
It's an allergy of the body, and it's an...
Allergies of what?
We're supposed to be grown men here, and you're making faces like the guy who's wearing the pants that you were talking about earlier. I'm expecting you to come out in the pants in a minute.
Again, we observe an insert expansion, where Perry seizes the opportunity to moralize. When a speaker moralizes, they implicitly state that they're the positive opposite to the other speaker. So by inference, Perry's a grown man.
It's an obsession of your mind and an allergy of your body. So this is what happens to me. I start thinking about alcohol, I can't stop. I can't stop thinking about it.
And what's the objective physical proof of this inability to stop?
Hitchens' counter-question consists of two halves. He parrots Perry's word stop, but maintains the word objective from his previous question. In illocutionary terms, he rejects Perry's answer as objective physical proof. This rejection is further emphasized by Hitchens' subsequent assertion.
Your argument is that it's willpower, Peter.
Of course it's willpower.
No, it's not willpower.
People constantly stop both drinking and taking drugs.
You're just a person who's talking who's wrong.
Next, Perry's sarcasm becomes more and more prominent. This sarcasm is a direct threat to Hitchens' face. Sarcasm is often observed in the later stages of a debate, when the speakers don't really listen to each other, but might still pretend to.
We're not involved. It's an effort of will on your part not to do it now, isn't it?
I'm in control of the first drink, and so I do all these things to protect myself from not having the first drink.
Sure.
But once I have that drink, the allergy of the body kicks in. This is all documented alcoholism proof. Then I can't stop after that.
Our problem with Peter...
I mean, I'm allergic to aspirin, but it doesn't mean I have to drink.
But you have to look at the evidence, Peter.
That is
What is this allergy? It's
an allergy of your body.
It's just
not that your aspirin point wasn't. Not that your aspirin point wasn't genius, but you don't know what you're talking about.
That's right.
Perry's final statement.
You don't know what you're talking about.
That's right.
Is an unequivocal attack on Hitchens' ethos. Ethos is appeal to authority and credibility. It's unequivocal because it's not preceded by hedges like, I don't think you know what you're talking about, or something similar. In everyday conversations, most people will go far to avoid this scenario.
You can't come up with... I asked him to come up with an objective diagnosis of the presence of this force in his body. That's not an objective diagnosis. Yourself is the reverse of objective.
Myself and 10 million other alcoholics and addicts across America and across the world are having these problems.
Perry uses an argument by generalization, where specific instances are translated into more general principles, and Hitchens attacks him for it. In the following, Hitchens once again parrots part of Perry's statement.
But people have problems with drugs and drink. People like taking them and they don't want to stop taking them. But it doesn't mean they have a disease that needs to be treated.
So the American Medical Association is wrong in your opinion?
If the American Association says it's a disease, yes, of course they're wrong. There is
so
an immense fashion at the moment.
But you're right.
There's an immense fashion at the moment.
But you're right.
Parroting is an effective way to either show or make it sound like the speaker is attending to the other speaker's proposition in detail. It's a way of acknowledging the harmless parts of the other speaker's statements, while still refuting the other speaker's conclusion. Perry's backing for his argument, the American Medical Association, is an appeal to ethos, the ethos that he stated that Hitchens doesn't have. Perry's argument is known as the ethos argument. X is true because Y says it's true. The weakness of this type of argument is that the other speaker might not acknowledge the validity of the source or pretend not to acknowledge it. Hitchens tries refuting Perry's ethos argument with this broader statement.
There's immense fashion at the moment for dismissing the ability of people to take control over their own lives and to make excuses for them. We have, far from 50 years, been treating alleged addiction as a disease, as a crime. We've been treating it as a disease, and the result is we have many, many more drug users than we did when this policy started.
Hitchens' argument rests on two presuppositions. First, you have to agree that there's an immense fashion for dismissing the ability of people to take control over their own life, before you can agree that this relates to the assertions of the American Medical Association. Next, Hitchens makes a causal argument.
Since we've followed your policies, more and more people have been taking dangerous and damaging drugs. Since we've ceased treating drug possession as a crime, and have more or less ceased either arresting or prosecuting people possessing drugs. Since we have classified drug takers as people with a medical problem, we have had more and more of all of them.
Let me ask
Can that possibly be right?
Causal arguments take on the form, if X, then Y. Y is the logical result of X. Hitchens claims that treating drug taking as a disease has resulted in more people taking drugs. Usually, a causal argument is followed by backing, in this case in form of statistics.
Can I just give him one quick put down?
If you want to, you go ahead.
You're making a point that is as ludicrous as saying that Peter Pan was real.
Well, you keep saying that, but you cannot come up with an objective definition of the thing which...
I was going to produce an argument as maybe...
Perry makes an argument by comparison, directly labeling Hitchens' claims as fiction, just like Hitchens labeled Perry's claims as fiction, with the noun fantasy. Hitchens responds right away, and thus shows that he's not affected by Perry's insult. Next, Perry also disagrees rather strongly with his quote-unquote ally.
Drug courts don't do much better than voluntary treatment. Drug courts do fairly much the same.
That's not true either. It's not as crazy as what he's saying, but it's not true either.
Well,
Perry says as crazy, which implies that what she's saying is in fact crazy. Thus, his final statement, it's not true either, is an understatement compared to this implication. Hitchens asks a first part question.
They have to be sober.
It's just willpower. It's much more complicated.
They have to be sober to make that decision. They can't be. They can't be intoxicated to make that decision.
How is it that people ever cease to be addicts if what you say is true?
However, we don't get an appropriate second part answer. Instead, we get another insert expansion.
Well, Santa.
It's terribly clever, but this is a very serious subject, and you treat it with immense levity.
We've now reached a peak in the discussion. This is what Perry's diminishment of Hitchens has led to. We've observed this process since Hitchens uttered the words, fantasy of addiction. The speakers continue repeating previous claims, and the discussion ends.
No, how is it that if what you say,
you're the one
what you say, the policy
levity.
which you so smugly and loftily advocate, this policy which has led to disaster in Western countries for decades, how is it that if what you say is true, how is it that people, because it has led to a laxness in the law which has meant many more people taking the terrible risk of taking the drugs which you say are addictive and we all agree are damaged?
That is simply not true, and we know it, and the research shows it.
Yeah.
Quite simple. All you've got to do, Peter, is a bit of reading of the evidence, and you will
read
find
something other than your book.
Okay, all right, that's enough. Thank you.
He cannot argue seriously.
That's it for now. Thanks for watching.